you. Can you hear us?
Loud and clear.
Can we hear you? I think we might need to. I sort of vaguely got you, so I suspect we need our technicians to get your volume up a little bit. Can you say something again?
Good afternoon, Bahrain.
Yeah, wonderful, perfect. We can hear you loud and clear. Nice to have you with us. So maybe first of all, Niraj, can I ask you sort of for a little bit of a brief explanatory note on what embedded finance is exactly? Again, we have an array of people interested in the financial services and coming from the financial services sector, but to give everyone a clear idea of what the panel will be talking about, I suspect that might be a good way to start.
No, absolutely. So, it's my pleasure to be here in the forum with all of you. And, in terms of the definition of embedded finance, this is basically, every economic activity or an exchange has a financial transaction. And embedded finance is basically looking at customer journeys, customer decision-making process, and extending financial services, bringing it a little bit more forward than what it is, how it is currently offered in the market, and embedding it into journeys at different third-party organizations where customers interact, do their research, are about to make a purchase or an economic exchange. And that's where you can come in and offer your proposition on financial services.
Thank you. That was very, very clear and snappy. So that's we always like that. The Economist is all about concision. Ozan, so can I ask you a sort of a follow-up question? So, everyone here in the room, I'm pretty sure, is familiar with the fact that you can, pay for things online. Many probably have a PayPal account. Many have bought things on Amazon. Nowadays, maybe many have bought things via Instagram.
Yeah.
So how is the way that you see embedded finance and what OpenPayd does, for instance, different to what PayPal does, or what Stripe does, or what Square does?
Well, first of all, we connect various payment providers and different payment rails through a single API or a single connection to our clients. So what we are trying to do, we are trying to help companies that are either financial service providers themselves or non-financial service providers to being able to consume and provide financial services. So basically, anything to do with banking and payment, as much as possible, should happen in the background with zero friction. It's like when you take an Uber ride, your payments happens in the background. You don't look for your card, you don't look for your PIN code, you don't expect any other service to be interacting with your journey. It just happens in the background. So OpenPayd, as an embedded financial service provider, or what we often call a banking as a service provider, we're helping various type of companies help their client consume financial services.
Can you give us an example of some companies, even if you can't name them? Or
no,
feel free to name them.
No, I can name one. I saw Crypto.com have a stand out there. If you go to Europe or in the UK and you want to send money or receive money from Crypto.com or benefit from their fiat wallet, that wallet and that service is provided by OpenPayd. And we have a lot of other examples also in other type of industries, which is not the cryptocurrency industry.
So Niraj, can I ask you sort of how prevalent is this embedded finance at the moment? Because again, because it's happening in the background, it's possible that it's sort of, and if it is indeed frictionless, then we don't see it or we don't notice it as end users. So how widespread is it at the moment? And then we can get to how widespread it could become.
So I think it's pretty widespread already in the Middle East. I mean, there are several examples, especially in the payment side, but there is still a lot of room and space for more to come in terms of embedded finance within the Middle East. I can give you one example. Like there is a use case, and this is from Europe. There is a retailer called Co-op, which is a Carrefour equivalent of a chain of supermarkets, And what they have implemented is a journey where if you are pushing your trolley cart down the shopping aisle, you can take your loyalty program, loyalty points, and invest them into your mutual funds, into your pension funds. As you're pushing the trolley cart down and picking up your groceries, potatoes, you can round up your the invoice there. As you're checking out of the teller of the counter, you can withdraw cash as if you have access to your bank account. You can make payments. You can avail personal finance. And then what they've done is, if they see that, hey, Niraj has bought a tent and he's going away for the weekend, they can actually take that data and offer a insurance policy for extreme sports and say, hey, Niraj, would you like to avail this for $5? So this is how deep or integrated embedded finance has got. What you see in the scenario is on the left-hand side, you have Co-op, who is orchestrating the customer journeys in the shopping store. And on the right-hand side, you have two banks hooked up, you have an insurance carrier hooked up, and you have an investment bank hooked up. And they're actually orchestrating and providing various services, embedding these into the journeys of consumers who are shopping online or in store within the Co-op group. So this is just one example of embedded finance.
Thank you. Ozan, so how often are we using embedded finance today without sort of necessarily realizing that that is what we're doing?
In our daily life, we encounter embedded financial services when we interact with our bank, with our traditional marketplaces, our airline, and in a lot of other, especially online services. But we are in a very, very early stage of embedded finance and banking as a service. Just think about your previous week.
So you said banking as a service?
Yes.
Isn't banking a service?
Banking as a service.
I understand that, but I mean, it's a sort of, it's a bit of a, it seems almost tautological.
Yes, so basically, when you are receiving banking-like services from a non-bank,
right? Okay.
We try to.
I'm being a little bit facetious.
No, I understand. I understand. Listen, we still use cash, we still use our card, and we still have to very often actively engage whenever it comes to payment. It do not happen in the background. So 20 years ago, when you went online, you had to log on to the internet. Today, you just go on the internet. Yeah. And if you look at payments the same way, we're still in a very, very early stage. Regulation is not properly there. Technology is not properly there. Trust and user behavior are still not there. You have examples of companies with successful usage of embedded finance, but still, I still carry my wallet, I still carry my credit card, I still have to carry cash from time to time. So there is still a long way before we have a fully integrated embedded financial service community.
Are there any parts of the world where it is more widespread? I mean, the one place that comes to mind immediately is China,
yep,
which sort of has a version of embedded finance, yeah, with the the ubiquitous payments apps, WeChat Pay and Alipay.
Yeah, so those type of apps are often referred to as super apps. They have anything from lifestyle services to healthcare services, and including payment services. How those apps are, how to put it nicely, I don't think liberal democracies can have those type of services on those premises that we see in certain countries, as in China. From a data protection point of view and other type of challenges, I don't advocate those type of services. But there's a huge gap between what we have in the UK or in the US today and what China is already doing. There is the reality for me, or the sweet spot, is somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, I mean, I think with sort of adopting the Chinese model elsewhere in the world, one of the reasons, I think you're absolutely right on the sort of constraints, especially in liberal democracies, but also there's just a sort of historical constraint, which is that the West already has certain ways that people are used to.
Yeah.
People have bank accounts, people have credit cards, they're used to using those services, and services which are sort of at least superficially a bit like them.
Yeah.
Whereas China sort of leapfrogged all that with the payments app, and was able to do that because there was no established incumbent infrastructure.
Correct.
And whereas you guys are trying to build on top of often, an established infrastructure, which is in many ways much more complicated.
Yeah, I mean, in large part of the world, you have Visa and MasterCard dominating the card network, and then you have strong local banks that are dominating the banking industry either locally or regionally or globally. So when you come in as an embedded financial service provider, you have to kind of look at what is already there, what kind of habits, what kind of user interactions are people used to, and then you have to build on top of that or by integrating existing services. So it's not like in, let's say in China, where people went from having zero financial services to having the state-of-the-art financial services in the less of 10 years.
Niraj, can I ask you, like, where do you see, which part of the world do you see as being most advanced in adopting embedded finance at the moment, and what can other parts of the world learn from those pioneering areas?
So I believe that Europe has got some really good use cases and examples, especially in the retail space. You've got examples like the likes of Uber or these delivery service that started from the core delivery service and they've sort of expanded right into Uber Eats, and then they've sort of now started with Uber Pay. So that's how sort of the opportunities are. I personally believe that there is a lot to explore here in the Middle East. There's a lot of opportunities. What embedded finance really brings is an opportunity to find those white spaces, find those new customer base or new pools of revenue in partnership with a third-party organization, banks can actually access and in a unique way. So to me, that's what embedded finance is, and there's lots and lots of opportunity here in the Middle East. And what you can do to it is you can embed and also bundle. So you can mix your financial services products, like you can combine, retail lending with insurance, or wealth with insurance, or wealth with credit, right? And then embed these into customer journeys in third-party organizations. And basically, you will be in a position where competition doesn't exist. So
Ozan, it's like when it comes to making this more widespread than it is at the moment, and sort of maybe focus specifically on this region. We were talking earlier. You said that you're going to be back in Dubai. You fly in and out of the region quite often. So, what are the biggest obstacles to more speedy adoption of these solutions? Is it a question of regulation? Is it a question of sort of consumer trust? Is it a question of the necessary sort of digital infrastructure? What's stopping this from becoming much bigger, much more quickly?
All the points you mentioned are critical. There are still friction. So there is still lack of regulation, or even if there is good regulation, there is lack of good implementation of that regulation. There is still lack of investment in the space, and there's also still a challenge getting a broader audience to adopt those products and services. So let's say you are in Dubai and you're using Grab or any other service locally. You are only going to interact with the financial services a bit because you have a local super app giving you another service. So, especially in the Middle East, there's still unclear regulation, lack of adoption from consumers, and also lack of tech investment that will enable these type of embedded services to prosper.
So when you say tech investment, do you mean investment in like technological infrastructure, or do you mean investment in sort of an ecosystem of companies that provide some of the underlying services?
Yeah, so first of all, you need digital services, for instance, marketplaces and other type of services that people consume. And then when they're consuming this service, the embedded finance bit reduces the friction in relation to the payment. Or it helps us grab more data so we can get a more personalized offering on your marketplace. But if you don't have the marketplace or the adoption of usage of that marketplace, the embedded finance bit becomes obsolete.
That's interesting. I mean, I was, Niraj, I was going to ask you maybe to tell us a little bit about how the private sector efforts, like those of OpenPayd and Additiv, sort of how they compare and contrast with things that, for instance, India's government has done with with a sort of nationwide, national, digital financial infrastructure that they're building. Is Additiv, as it were, on top of the sort of Aadhaar stack, or is it a competitor to it? So how would it work in a place like, obviously this is in India, but like, there are other countries which are sort of India is trying to export this idea of having an underlying nationalized digital infrastructure.
No, absolutely. I mean, India is massive, and they are progressing on this national digital infrastructure, which means from connecting digital identity, KYC, those basic type of information to complex data across different banking players and industries within the market. In terms of how relevant or what Additiv is doing in that context here in the Middle East. So when you look at Additiv, it's basically if you are a particular type of financial services sector player, like a bank or a lender or an insurance company, what Additiv enables is you can add wealth, you can add insurance, you can add credit, retail lending, and you can add payments and other kind of services. All of this on one single platform. So what we really enable is various different types of financial services players to look at the financial services value chain, break it down into different parts, and then reconstruct it. So by doing this, you can partner up with various sourcing partners like insurance or other type of sector players and combine and bundle with your own products and embed financial solutions that are relevant to your customers within your own journeys. And you can extend your distribution channels in a non-traditional way and partner with third-party organizations and embed these innovative financial services into their customer journeys. So that's what we are enabling in the market, and connecting the dots back into with the infrastructure. So both the likes of UAE and Saudi Arabia and Bahrain are leading on the open banking infrastructure, and I think that is the key in terms of opening up that exchange of data amongst various different types of financial services players in the market to enable innovation. I think where we come in is to actually help with the ideas and business propositions that banks or retailers could go to market and bring additional value to their customers.
So Ozan, on bringing more people into the system, I mean, OpenPayd talks a lot about reaching the underbanked and the underserved.
Yeah.
So how do you need the people using the service to actually have some sort of a connection already with the existing financial system? Do they need a bank account? Do they need a credit card? Or are there ways to sort of bypass that, which would enable more widespread adoption by people who do not have access or have not established access to the traditional financial system?
Well, in an ideal world, you already have a banking relationship. You have a bank account where you can send and receive money before you kind of come to our services. But given that you don't have a bank account, we are able to provide you with the bank account. So let's say you come from abroad to the UK or the European Union or somewhere else, and you start consuming some of the services that we provide embedded financial services to. So let's say you sign up with crypto.com and you don't have a bank account from before, we will be able to provide you a bank account.
So the company will set you up with a bank account?
Yes.
So you have a banking license?
No, we have an e-money license, but we also work with banks in the background that will issue the bank account. So depending on the usage of the account, we will allow you to transact like a normal bank, as well as getting a bank account.
Right. Well, so that is incredible. And has that a lot of uptake of that offer? Like, have people sort of come and Have you opened a lot of bank accounts?
Yeah, we have opened millions of bank accounts because usually what we are trying to do for our clients is to make them become a mini bank so they can hold on to their clients, upsell other services, and also grab more data from their consumers to provide even a better service.
And Niraj, I mean, I think unfortunately we're running out of time, but this has been a fascinating conversation. I would like to sort of maybe ask one last question, and that is on the sort of regulatory side. When you're trying to introduce these services, additive services in various jurisdictions, what are the sort of biggest regulatory obstacles? And are governments receptive to the idea that this should be more widespread, or are they still quite cautious? Famously, financial regulation tends to be quite strict everywhere in the world.
No, that is true, and I think the importance is on the compliance side, and that can be very complicated. From a regulatory perspective, it's a little bit of a mix. It depends on which geography or which country you're kind of going into. But yes, it is important. I think the key is to kind of really map out what are the requirements and what does the license for each of the parties involved allow. And if one can map that out clearly and concisely, and then sort of problem solve within that constraint, what is the art of the possible, and that's what we sort of come in and help our clients do. We challenging the regulator or sort of going through the process of pushing the regulations forward. I think that's a little bit of a longer journey, and it takes its own time. So we kind of work within the constraints of existing regulations within the region.
Thank you both. Unfortunately, we are out of time now. So a round of applause for our speakers. Thank you, Niraj, for joining us remotely. Thank you, Ozan, for making it here. And I'll hand over to Lavina for the next session. I think we need our customary photo here. Thank you so much. Lavina, the stage is yours. I couldn't hear him.